Every lore video on Rapture frames Adam as a resource. This misses its true nature, a biological ledger of objectivist economics. The little sisters weren't victims, they were living profit margins. The bathysphere descends, a songbird's wingbeat echoes. To his a frozen songbird's wingbeat echoes, kindly asterisk not a command triumphant face, but a failed mechanism. Human a system that turned flesh into fuel for a utopia built on stolen breath. To his a frozen songbird's wingbeat echoes, kindly asterisk not a command triumphant face, but a failed mechanism, human. What if the little sisters weren't victims but cogs in a machine that turned flesh to fortune? Tenenbaum's formula, Sutchung's harvest, Adam wasn't just fuel, it was a ledger. Every breath extracted, every lung scarred, wrote a new line in Ryan's balance sheet. The sisters were never meant to survive, they were meant to asterisk generate asterisk. A whispered truth curls through rusted halls. In Rapture's collapse, the economy never did. 82 words. Andrew Ryan built Rapture as a temple to self-interest. No altruism, no compromise, a city where the strong thrived by hoarding atom power. The little sisters were his silent partners in this creed. Children, yes, but not in the way that word implies innocence. They were walking vaults, their DNA the raw ore of Rapture's plasmid economy. Ryan's philosophy demanded efficiency. Harvesting them ensured the market's flow, each sister a transaction. Each harvest a ledger entry. Adam was not a miracle, it was a multiplier. A biological manifestation of Ryan's belief that man's worth is measured in what he can take. The little sisters were never meant to live beyond their utility. Their laughter echoed through the halls not as joy, but as a metronome for the city's greed. Ryan's utopia required sacrifice, not of himself, of others. What becomes of a child when her body is a commodity, when her breath fuels the engines of a man who claims to revere freedom? The answer is written in the blood on the walls. Rapture's economy was a closed loop, the sisters were its pivot. Their existence proved a theorem that collectivism dies when every soul is reduced to a resource. Ryan's dream was a paradox, he drowned in it, the little sisters. They were the water, and water always finds its level. Adam became Rapture's currency. Plasmids were tools, power earned through self-made industry. Ryan's objectivism had a biological form. Tenenbaum and Sutchung discovered the Adam cycle in children. Little sisters were not victims but variables, each harvest a data point in Ryan's equation. Their biology sustained the economy. The more they gave, the more the system demanded. Plasmid's commodified ambition turned human potential into trade. Ryan's utopia required endless growth, endless extraction. The cycle was never meant to end, until the cost exceeded the gain. The sisters were the flaw in the model. Their depletion revealed the system's fraud. Objectivism weaponized itself. The price was paid in blood and biology. The experiment's end was written in its design. 225 words. Bill McDonough's spires pierced the abyss. Concrete and steel, forged in the fire of Ryan's vision, each arch a testament to man's right to power. Each corridor a ledger of self-interest. The welcome to Rapture mural looms cracked down its spine, a fracture in the creed. The paint bleeds downward like Adam Price. What did Ryan build? Not a city, a pressure valve, a system designed to test the limits of human avarice. The little sisters, their harvest not of souls but of economic proof. Adam, the currency of transcendence, extracted in cycles of death and rebirth. The architecture breathes, hollow and vast, echoing with the weight of unspoken debts. The cathedral of Comstock's delusion stands, its stained glass shattered by the very principles that raised it, a monument to a philosophy that consumed its host. The arena is silent now, the experiment complete, the cost, a civilization folded into its own design. The little sisters waded through wreckage, their hollow eyes harvesting Adam not as souls but as surplus. Each drop was a ledger entry in Ryan's ledger of the damned. Splicers clawed at their own flesh to fuel the machine, proving that survival of the fittest was a lie sold to the desperate. The poor were not citizens, they were capital. Ryan's no master creed had one master, the market. Fontaine's smuggling rings coiled through Rapture's veins, a rot Ryan could not purge. Autarky was a myth, his city thrived on theft from the sea, from the dead, from children. By 1958, the Civil War was inevitable. Atlas splicers rose, not for ideology but for breath, for the right to choke on air instead of atom. The streets became a ledger of blood. What had Ryan built? A mirror. Atom was not power, it was proof. Every plasmid was a transaction. Flesh for fortune, life for leverage. The little sisters were not victims. They were variables, their DNA a currency Ryan had weaponized. When the revolt came, when Fontaine's fleets shattered the skyline, Rapture's true purpose was clear. It was never utopia, it was a pressure test. A city designed to collapse under the weight of its own logic. The experiment did not fail, it concluded. Fontaine did not merely raise a boy, forged a weapon. Suchong's conditioning was no accident. Each lesson in loyalty, each whispered lie about a father's death, was a gear in a machine designed to make Jack a willing executioner. The bathyscaph's hum, the sterile tang of Atom in the every detail of Jack's upbringing was a calculated betrayal. He was not a savior, he was a fuse. The little sisters floated like trapped angels, their lungs clogged with salt water and stolen potential. To Rapture's elite, they were not children but currency, their DNA a resource to be harvested, their screams attacks on progress. The sisters' processing was a sacrament of greed, needles plunged, organs ripped, souls reduced to data points in Ryan's ledger. Atom was not just a drug. It was the philosophy made flesh life as raw material, morality as a market inefficiency. Tenenbaum saw the math and refused to be a variable. While the city's architects praised objectivity, she carved a path through the sewers, rescuing what Ryan called assets. Her rebellion was not strategy, it was spite, a wetware insurrection. She knew the sisters were not replaceable, knew they were people, knew Rapture's equations could not account for that. The first crack spread from her defiance. A fissure in the ideology, but objectivism does not die quietly. It adapts, it feasts on the cracks. Rapture had not yet learned its final lesson. Some systems, once unleashed, cannot be contained. The experiment concluded, the plague remained. Atom was never a miracle. It was objectivism's biology, pure, unyielding, and hungry. The little sisters bled value, their lungs filled with currency. Every harvest was a ledger entry in Ryan's godless cathedral, but systems breed contradictions. Sophia Lamb rose from the filth, her family a hymn to the many, a shadow against the blade of Ryan's The Civil War did not roar. It whispered, would you kindly, a phrase etched into flesh, a switch thrown in the spine. The wealthy, once masters of their minds, became puppets walking, breathing enforcers of a philosophy that had no use for them. They killed without knowing, they starved without seeing. The splicers came last, not as monsters, but as inevitability. By 1960, Rapture's streets teemed with them, eyes clouded, jaws gnashing, the hollow remnants of men and women who had become nothing more than raw material. Sophia's family tried to bury the plague. They chained themselves to the ruins, praying to a god who never answered, but the city had already forgotten its creators. The atom never stopped flowing. It seeped into the cracks, into the bones of the dead, into the minds of the living. What was built in fire cannot end in ash. Rapture's final lesson was not in its collapse but in how the world above let the same poisons seep into its veins. The experiment is not over, the plague remains. Atom was never just a drug, it was a ledger. Andrew Ryan's objectivism, crystallized into flesh, turned children into currency. The little sisters did not harvest Ada M. They were harvested. Each scream a transaction, each eye a profit margin. Tenenbaum saw the math and refused to calculate. He became the system's first crack, smuggling sisters through shadows, trading his name for their lives. A quiet rebellion in a city built on silence. Suchong, architect of the Big Daddies, learned too late that control is a fragile mask. The girl he twisted into a weapon became his reckoning. Her Big Daddy, his creation, drowned him in the very tide of power heads sought to command. Tenenbaum's final act was no grand speech. It was a hand closing around a sister's, a promise kept in the dark. Redemption in Rapture was not a philosophy, it was a gesture, a whisper against the machinery. The plague endures, but so does the antidote, not in tearing down towers, but in refusing to let the numbers erase the humanity behind them. The message is not in the collapse, it is in the choice to rescue. What if the little sisters weren't victims but living ledgers in Andrew Ryan's ledger of progress? Atom wasn't a miracle, it was a transaction. Each vial siphoned, each soul hollowed was a data point proving objectivism's end, not survival, not even fitness. Annihilation, plasmids didn't grant power. They rented it, interest compounding with every stolen heartbeat. Rapture's economy wasn't metaphor, it was blueprint. Its towers of glass and greed still cast shadows where boardrooms trade bone for profit, where self-improvement demands extraction from the earth-hand the weak. The Little Sisters were never just currency, they were warning, a shriek in the system. Every innovation that reduces bodies to biomass, every empire built on the premise that humanity is a resource to optimize it echoes. The choice isn't between collapse or utopia. It is between recognition and denial. The numbers never erased humanity. We did. Adam was not a resource, it was a reckoning, a living ledger of transactions where souls were subtracted to balance the equation. The Little Sisters did not harvest Adam. They were harvested pawns in a calculus that reduced their screams to decimal points. Andrew Ryan's utopia was a ledger with no margin for error. His philosophy did not merely exploit the weak, it redefined weakness as a variable to be extracted. The audio diary's whisper is no plea. It is the final line in the prophet's statement, * would you kindly, * a command dressed as consent, the last cog in a machine that turned free will into a liability. The phrase is not a flaw in the system. It is the system's purest form of contract where the signature is also the shackle. The numbers did not lie. They were never meant to, we did. What if the signature was never the choice, only the transaction? The Rapture family, not a cult, but a lifeline thrown into the abyss of collapse. Sophia Lamb's embrace, a bomb to Ryan's algorithm. The Little Sisters, not victims, but variables in a system that turned flesh into fortune.